Hey, this is Andrew Brown from Exam Pro, and in this follow along, we're going to be looking at EC2 and also services that are adjacent to it, so like auto-scaling groups, load balancers, elastic IPs, things like that. So we fully understand EC2. You don't have to know tons for the exam, but you should be able to go through the motions of this with me so that you can cement that knowledge for some of those deeper concepts like working with key pairs and things like that. So let's make our way over to the EC2 console and learn what we can learn. And generally, when you go over to the EC2 console, it'll bring you to the dashboard. For whatever reason, it didn't bring me there. And then the idea here is that on the left-hand side, we can make our way over to instances. Okay, and this is where we can launch our first instance. So if we go here and launch our instance, the first thing we're going to be presented with is to choose our AMI, or Amazon Machine Image. And so that is a template that contains the software configuration, so the operating system, applications, and other binaries that would be installed on that OS by default. All right, and so we have a variety that we can choose from in the quick starts. And generally the ones that you're going to see first are the ones that AWS support. So there are AMIs or operating systems that AWS will support when you contact them, and then there's ones that are outside that where they'll still help you with, but they might not have the knowledge on. So just understand that if you pick from these core ones, you're going to be in good shape. The most popular is the Amazon Linux 2 because it's part of the free tier, and it is very minimal and well hardened by AWS, so it's a very good choice there. But you can see you can install a bunch of things. So like if you want to launch a Mac OS server, you can absolutely do that. A Red Hat, SUSE, Ubuntu, a Windows server, you name it, they have it. If you wanted something more farther out there, you can go to the marketplace and subscribe to one that is managed by a company. Basically, everything exists under the sun here. Or you could get a community AMI. So these are ones that are contributed by the community for free. But we're going to go back to Quick Start here. And what I want you to notice is that there is this AMI ID. That's how we can uniquely identify what we're using. If we were to change region, even with the same Amazon Linux 2 instance, this thing will change. So just understand that it is regional based, and it comes in a 64-bit variant and a ARM variant. And so we're going to be using the x86 here. You can notice here you can change it on the right-hand side. We're going to stick with x86. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. So now we're going to choose our instance type, and so this is going to decide greatly how much we're going to be spending, because the larger it is, the more we're going to spend. So see this T2 Micro, if we wanted to know the pricing for that, we go to Ec2 Pricing AWS. And once we get to Ec2 Pricing, we want to go to On Demand. And from here, this will load. And so down below, we can kind of go find our price. So it should show us the list. Ah, here it is. Okay. So I can say a T2 Micro. And we can see the on-demand is this. So it seems really cheap. What you got to do is do the math. So if you do times 730, that's how many hours there are in a month. If we launch a T2 Micro, and let's say we didn't have the free tier. You do, if you first made your account, you're going to have 750 hours for free with the free tier. But if you didn't, it would only cost you $8.46 USD, okay? So just be aware of that. And if you ever need to figure something out, go there, copy it, do the math, 730. It's pretty easy. So here we have a T2 Micro in the T2 family. It's going to have one vCPU. Notice it has a V for virtual, so there could be more than a single CPU on the underlying hardware, but we're only going to have access to one virtual CPU. We have 1 gigabyte of memory. It's for low to moderate network performance, so that's a factor that can change if you need like gigabit stuff, like really fast connections for on-prem hybrid connections, and you have specialized servers for that. But for this is fine. The T2 Micro is great. If you want, you can also search this way to see all the instance families and things like that. You can filter for current generations, all generations. So this is fine, okay? So from there, we're going to go to configure our instance type. You can say, let's launch multiples of these instances. Let's turn on spot to save money and try to bid for a particular price. We can change our VPC. It's going to default to the default VPC. If you have no subnets, it's just going to pick one at random here, which is fine. Whether to auto-assign a public IP address. If you do not have an IP address, you cannot reach the internet. So generally, you want this to be enabled. This is dependent on the subnet, whether it will default to enabled, but it doesn't matter if you have an EC2 instance in a private or public subnet. You can always override this and give it a public IP address. You have placement groups, which allows you to place servers together closely, not something for the certified cloud practitioner. There's capacity reservations, so if you're worried about AWS running out of this, you can reserve capacity, so that's kind of interesting. Domain join directory, this isn't something that I've done much with, but I imagine that has something to do with Active Directory or something like that to join information. Then you need to have an IAM role, and we absolutely do need an IAM role here. So what I want you to do is create a new role. I'm just going to close off these other tabs here, and we will go, wait a moment, create a new role here. And we want to do this for EC2. So we say EC2 is what we're creating the role for. We'll hit next. And I don't know if I have a policy, but I'm going to go ahead and, well, I don't need to make a new policy, but I just want SSM. And the reason I want SSM is so that I can use Sessions Manager to log in, so we don't have to use key pairs. We will use key pairs, but if we didn't want to use it, that's what we could do. And this used to be the old role, and it'll tell you, hey, go use this new one here. So I just want to make sure I know which one it is. And so we'll just checkbox that on. We'll hit next. We can add tags. Right here it'd be, well, actually, we don't need to add any tags here, so that's fine. We'll just hit next. And then I'll just say my SSM EC2 role. Okay. And we'll create that role. And now that we have created that role, we can go back to our first tab here and give this a refresh and then drop down, and it should show up here. If we go down here a little bit, we could turn on extra monitoring. There is monitoring built in, but if you wanted to monitor to a lower, more frequently, you could do that as well. We want shared tenancy, right? This is where you change to dedicated instance or dedicated host. Obviously, these cost more, but we're going to stick with shared. Elastic inference, so this is for attaching a fractional GPU, great for ML, not something that we want. There's credit specification. I don't remember seeing this before. Selecting unlimited for credit specification allows for, to burst beyond the baseline. So it's for bursting. Here you can attach an EFS. So if you need a file system that you want to mount or attach. Then there's the enclave option. So Nitro Enclave enables you to create isolated compute environments to further protect your and securely process highly sensitive data. So it might be something you might want to checkbox on based on your use case. And then down below we have our ability to enter our user data. And this is something we want to do because we want to install Apache so that we have something to work with here. So what I'm going to do is make a shebang. So that is a pound and an exclamation mark. I know that's really small, so I'll try to bump up my font here so you can see what I'm doing. And we're going to do a /bin and a /bash. On the next line here, we're going to do yum install -y httpd. That's going to install Apache. And why it's not called Apache, I don't know why, but they call it HTTPD. There's no Apache in the name there. And so we'll say systemctl start HTTPD, systemctl enable HTTPD. So we're saying start up Apache and then make sure that it stays running if we restart our machine. Very simple. So from there, we will go to our storage. We'll say add our storage. And this is at 8 GB by default. We could turn that up to 30 if we like. So you can go all the way up to 30 if you like, and you might want to do that. But I'm going to leave it at 8. We could change our volume type. I'm fine with GP2 because that's very cost effective. And if we want to turn on encryption, and you should always turn on encryption, there's no reason not to. And so we'll turn that on. It's not like it's going to cost you more. It's going to be the same cost. It's just your choice there. If we do want to add a tag, yes, we're going to add a name, and we're going to say my EC2 instance. Okay. And so that's going to give us a name, which is something we would really like to have. Then we have our security group. I'm going to just create a new security group called my EC2 SG here. And just say my EC2 SG. Something you cannot do is rename a security group once you've made it. So make sure you don't make a spelling mistake up here. And we want to be accessing that HTTP, or it's going to launch a website. So in order to do that, we need to make sure we have HTTP as the type with the port 80 open. And we want it from anywhere. So we'll say anywhere. And that will be 0.0.0.0/0. And that's for the IPv4. This is for the IPv6. Okay, so we'll just say internet. And this is for SSH, right? And for this, I would probably suggest to say my IP, but since we might be using a Cloud Shell to do that, we're going to leave it as anywhere so that we don't have any issues connecting. So from here, we'll review and launch. And you can review what it is that's going on here. It's going to say here, hey, you have an open port. That's okay. We want the internet to see our website because that's the whole point there. And we'll go ahead and launch it. It's going to ask for a key pair. We can go down and say proceed without key pair. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new key pair because I want to show you how those work. And I'm sure we've already done in this course once, but we'll do it again. And so I'm going to just name this as my EC2 instance here. And then we're going to go download that key pair. It's going to download a Pem file there. And so now we can go ahead and launch that instance. And while that is launching, so I'm going to just close this other tab here. We're going to click on the View Instances. And so here is that instance. That's why we put the tag so we could have a name there. We're going to wait for that to start. But as that's going, I'm going to make a new tab by just right-clicking here on the logo. Click anywhere pretty much to do that. And once we do that, we'll click on Cloud Shell. And as that is going, what I want to do is take this Pem down below. I'm going to move it to my desktop to make it easier for me to upload. I'm doing this off screen. Okay. And once this environment's running, I'm going to go ahead and upload that. Okay. So we'll just give it a moment to do that. We're also waiting for the server to spin up. As you'll notice, there is a public IP address here. It says it's running. So if we want, we can copy it. We're looking for those 2 checks to pass. So the server could be available, but generally you want to wait for those 2 system checks because one says, hey, the hardware's fine, the network's fine, things like that, okay? But if I take that IP address, paste it on up here, we have the web page, so that is working. No problem there, so that's great. And we'll go over to Cloud Shell, and that is still starting. It's not the fastest, but that's just how it is. And, you know, we'll get going here in a second, as soon as this decides to load. There we go. So it's loaded. I can type clear here just to clear that screen out. And so what I want to do is upload that Pem file. So I'm going to go and upload that file. We're going to go ahead and select it. I'm going to go to my desktop here. Whoops, my desktop. And we are going to choose my EC2 instance Pem. All right. And from there, we'll hit upload. And that's going to upload that Pem file. Once that is uploaded, we're going to do ls. Okay, and so this is from a previous tutorial, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete that other one there. We'll say remove EFS example Pem. Yes. Okay, we'll type clear. And then what we can do here is type in chmod, and I believe it's 400. And what did we call this? My EC2 instance Pem. If you hit tab, it will autocomplete, which is nice. And if you do ls-la, we can take a look at that file and see it should look like this. It should have only one R here. So the idea is you're locking it down so it's not writable or executable. It's just readable because that's what you have to have it if you want to SSH. And so if we want to SSH, what we'll do is hit the connect button here. And we have 4 options. They just give you too many options. There's going to be a 5th one for sure soon. But right now we're talking about SSH. So for SSH, we had to chmod our file, which we did. And then we need to use this DNS to connect to it. And so this is the full line here. If you click on this, copy that over and paste it in, that should be everything. And notice we're doing EC2 user, followed by this. You could put the IP address in here instead if you preferred. So if you were over here, you could go and take that IP address, which is, I think, shorter, nicer. But, you know, if you just click that one button, it works, that's fine. You always have to accept the fingerprint. Then you'll be inside the instance. You can type who am I to see which user you are. You're the EC2 user. And that's the user that AWS creates for their Amazon Linux instances. It's going to vary per AMI. So not all AMIs have an EC2 user. It might be something else, but that's generally the ones that AWS uses for their supported ones. And so if we do an LS, again, we're in the server right now. We can tell because it says right here. Or if we do a PWD, we can kind of look around. So I think it's going to be at var www. That's where HTTPD or Apache always puts their files here. So if I go in here, whoops, I'm just looking for the index file. So I thought the index file was in cd var www HTML. Well, where the heck is it? So I'm going to just touch a file here and see if it overrides it. Oh, I don't care. I'll just type sudo. And what we can do is just try to restart this system ctl. There's a very similar command that's like service, and so I always forget the order of it. So I think it'd be, I'm just checking, probably restart HTTPD. And so failed to restart, the policy was not provided as the name service. Service. maybe sudo. There we go. And so if we go back here, I'm going to see if it changed, because it will take whatever is in the index.html file. So if there's no file there, it's going to show that there. And so what I can do is I can edit this file. So I'm going to type vi index.html, and I'm going to hit I for insert mode. Oh, it says it's read only. So what we have to do, q quit. Oops, clear ls. And so what we need to do is do sudo vi index.html. And so Vim, every single key is a hotkey, okay? I'm not teaching Vim here, but I'm going to teach you the basics. But the idea is that when you're here, notice that the cursor is blinking. When I hit I, it enters insert mode, and now I can type normally. So I'd say, hello, hello cloud, okay? And then I'm going to hit escape to go back to navigation mode, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to hit colon, so it brings up the command. I'm going to type in write and quit, okay? And hit enter. And so I'll type clear. And so, whoops, clear. And so we'll hit up till we get that command. Sudo systemctl restart HTTPD. We'll hit that, hit enter. Okay, and it should restart pretty fast. There it is. So it says hello cloud. I probably didn't even have to restart it to do that. But anyway, so now that instance, you can see how we're updating that. So what I want to do is just do a sanity check and make sure that if we restart this instance, that we're going to be able to have Apache running. That's something you should always do. If you have an app and or anything and you install it, restart your server, make sure that everything works. So what I'm going to do is just hit exit here. So we go back to the top level Cloud Shell, type clear. I'm going to go back over to my EC2 instance. I'm going to have to click around to find it here. And what I want to do is reboot it. Okay. And if I reboot the machine, the IP address is going to stay the same. Okay. So if I reboot it, the IP address is going to stay the same. And the reboot's going to happen really fast. If we want to observe that reboot, we could go over to here on the right-hand side, go to the system log, and it would show us that it had rebooted. I think so. Yeah, it does cloud init there. I think it rebooted. Not sure. But anyway, if it's rebooted, then we can go ahead and connect and make sure everything's fine. So let's just go here and hit enter. And let's see if what the web page is here. Notice that it's hanging, right? So it's probably because it's still restarting, even though it doesn't look like it is. And that's something that you have to understand about the cloud, is that you have to think about what you're doing and have confidence that it is happening, and also just double check it. But that's something that can be kind of frustrating, because these are globally available services. They're massively scalable. And so one of the trade-offs is that you don't always have the most responsive UIs. AWS has one of the most responsive UIs out of all the major providers, but even still, like, sometimes I have to second guess myself. But the page right now is not working. Now it is, so it's fine. So it just took time for that to reboot. And so what I want to do is connect a different way. So we're going to go here, and we're going to hit, we're going to checkbox that on. We're going to hit connect. And instead of using SSH client, we're just going to go to Sessions Manager and hit connect. And this is the preferred way of connecting, because you don't have to have this SSH key. And that's a lot more secure, because if someone has that key and you hand it to someone, they could hand it to somebody else, and then you have a big problem on your hands. So here, this looks very similar, but if you type who am I, it actually logs in as the SSM user, which is kind of annoying. So I type in sudo su, I have to do this hyphen here, and then I'm going to say the user I want to be, which is EC2 user. And then if I type who am I, we are the correct user. You can't do anything in that SSM hyphen user or SSM user, so you got to switch that over. And I can bump this up to make it a bit larger. So this is obviously not as nice as working over here or even in your own terminal, but it's a lot more secure, and it's tracked and all these other things. So we really should be using it, okay? And I really don't like having to bump this up with my HTML. I'm going to just go back to 0 there. There's probably like a way to configure that. But anyway, let's just go and take a look at our file. I'm going to type vi again, and we're going to do var www html index.html. I'm going to put sudo in front of there. And again, remember, you have to hit I to go into insert mode. And what I'm going to do is just capitalize that, hello cloud, give that exclamation mark, colon WQ to quit, right quit. I'm going to go back here, refresh. Okay, so we don't have to restart our server, which is nice. All right. So that's that. That's pretty clear. So I'll hit terminate here. And I don't think we need Cloud Shell for anything, so I'm just going to close that. And so that's pretty much it when it comes to working with an EC2 instance. And so the next thing I want to show you is Elastic IP, okay?